NHL insider Bob McKenzie has dropped a major rumor on Twitter this evening discussing the 2020 NHL Draft Lottery. Could there actually be two lotteries? How would it work? Who would be eligible for the first overall pick? We'll get into this scenario coming up next. So welcome back to Liberty here, Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some news this evening on a big-time rumor that Bob McKenzie, the most connected and the original NHL insider, dropped on Twitter earlier this evening in the past couple of hours. This concept that he's discussing could very well involve two lotteries with many teams being involved here in the mix. So let's dive in. First of all, I'll show you what he had to say on Twitter, and then we'll kind of explain a little bit further and how it's all going to work. Now, keep in mind as well as we go through this is not a confirmed factual information. This is Bob McKenzie saying what the latest information he's hearing. This right now is a rumor, but he's hoping that the NHL will be able to shed some light, maybe make an announcement here soon enough to confirm what is actually going to take place. Now, here's the information from McKenzie on Twitter. He starts off with saying, getting lots of questions on the draft lottery. When will it be? How many teams? What format? The odds? For now, a lot more questions than answers. Not even the GMs who are in the lottery or hope to be seem to have many, if any, firm details on it. What about the odds? The bottom 7 are hoping or expecting their odds will be at least what they would have been in a normal lottery. That would be Detroit 18.5%, Ottawa 13.5%, Ottawa again with San Jose's pick 11.5%, LA 9.5%, Anaheim 8.5%, New Jersey 7.5%, and Buffalo 6.5%. If that's the case, what about the odds for the next 8 teams, whomever they may be? Well, there is a remaining 24.5% up for grabs. I suppose it's possible the next 8 could get the normal lottery odds. Another concept, and I should stress it's nothing more than a rumor, is that the 8 teams who would lose in the play-in round would equally share the remaining 24.5%, or roughly 3.06% odds for each of them. So by now you may be asking, if the lottery is indeed on June 26th, or any time before the beginning or end of the play-in series, best case scenario mid to late July perhaps, how can you have a draft lottery when you only know 7 of the teams involved? Well, that's where this could get really interesting. I can tell you there has been talk among some NHL management types that there could, emphasis on could, be 2 draft lotteries, so to speak. How might that work? Just spitballing here, but you could conceivably have a 15-team draft lottery where you know the names of the first 7 entrants, but you only have slot numbers representing 8 through 15. Conduct the draft lottery as per normal. The results are the results. Questions here. Would the lottery just be for the number 1 pick? Would it be for picks 1, 2, and 3 like normal? Again, either way, it's possible to conduct a late June lottery and determine the order of selection for the first 15 picks, except for the fact you would have to fill in the 8 blanks at a later date after the play-in rounds are completed and assuming the losers of those series are indeed lottery teams. If so, there could be a second lottery or draw to assign those 8 teams to the vacant slots. Imagine the possibilities. If one of the 8 nameless teams were to win the lottery in late June and secure number 1 overall, the 16 teams participating in the play-in would know if they lose the play-in that they might have a shot at first overall. In the meantime, the 7 teams not part of the return to play would at least know by late June exactly what slots they're in for the actual draft whenever it's held, and at this point the sense seems to be that it won't be until after the Stanley Cup's been awarded and the 1920 season is officially over. So lots of food for thought, and just to be clear, as I said, and I knew how much, if any, we've discussed here is fact-based, I'd report it as such. I'm certainly not doing that. I'd like to think we're all going to know a lot more on all fronts in the next 24 to 48 hours. That is an absolutely huge rumor dropped by Bob McKenzie. Obviously, as he indicated here, we could get some more clarity and confirmation on how this is all going to work in the next 1 or 2 days if everything goes the way he's expecting it to go. And as I mentioned, McKenzie is one of the most connected NHL insiders. He's basically the original NHL insider who's been around the longest, so we know that when McKenzie puts information on Twitter, it has something to it. And even though he's reporting this as a rumor and not as fact, he would have some pretty good sources before he'd even consider putting this information out there, considering what kind of backlash he could get if he was way off. Now, So basically, here's a summary of how this could work. I made up a little graphic here to show you, basically to simplify things on what he's saying. So I'll put that up on the screen. So essentially, for example, you could have a 15-teamed NHL Draft Lottery with 8 of the 7 teams being considered a placeholder. So the 7 teams that are in the Draft Lottery now, they would have their own regular odds. And as he mentioned, you could have the other 8 placeholder slots all have a 3% chance of winning the lottery for the top 3 spots, or top spot, however they decide to do it. And of course, they'd all have equal weighting. And when the draft lottery information is pulled, you could say, for example, as I did up here, you could say Detroit has the top pick, Ottawa has the number 2 pick. The 3rd spot goes to one of the placeholder teams, which had the 3% odds. Number 4 is the other Ottawa pick they received from San Jose. Then you could have another play-in spot, and you can see here how I just kind of mixed and mingled your placeholder with the other teams that are in there. So essentially, the 7 teams that are not going to be playing anymore would know exactly where they're picking, and the teams that are going into the play-in round, which is going to be 16 teams. So there's a lot of teams that are going to be trying to go into the remainder of the playoffs, and the other 8 teams essentially are going to be non-playoff teams and would go into the draft lottery is the potential way this concept could work. So there's really 23 out of the 31 NHL teams who essentially in some kind of way here would basically be involved in the draft lottery, because we don't know out of the 16 teams playing in the first round which the 8 of them are going to be falling out to go into these lottery spots that are going to be drawn for. So there's a lot of teams that are involved in one way or another. So there could be an NHL team today that was sitting in a playoff spot and expected to be in the playoffs, not be a part of the lottery at all, who it could end up losing this play-in round and grab one of those lottery spots. And one of those lottery spots that could end up being held, it could be a very high pick, it could be 1st overall. Can you imagine if some of the higher ranked teams that are expected to do well, like a team like the Maple Leafs or the Penguins or any of those guys, actually ended up losing their play-in round going into the draft lottery? And what if one of those placeholder teams ended up being for 1st overall? That's an insane possibility, but it's something that could happen if this format moves forward. So essentially, you do the one draft lottery for the 1 through 15, and then the 8 teams that are losers in the play-in round would basically do another lottery pull for those remaining spots. You'd know what spots were going to be up for grabs, but then they would do another lottery for those teams and determine what teams go in what placeholder spot. So it could create some really dramatic and insane scenarios in the NHL, which would certainly make things very interesting, very intriguing, certainly spark a lot of fan interest. And you know, right now with the NHL, the season's being on pause, they're losing lots of money. You know, they're going to go for something here that's going to have a bit more dramatic effect to gain lots more of attention, and certainly, you know, generate a big time buzz around the sport. And I think this would exactly accomplish that for sure, considering all the possibilities. I mean, we wouldn't even know who's going to be picking in certain spots for some time after this original lottery would take place. And as he said, it makes the most sense that the actual draft wouldn't take place until the season was officially over, the cup was awarded. So we're likely looking at sometime September, possibly even into October, depending on how all the dates fall, which we of course don't know yet. We're just going on best case scenarios at this point. That the NHL moves into phase 2 that we discussed in the video earlier today, possibly in the next week or so, early June. By sometime early July, they should be hopefully at the next phase so that they can be in like their mini training camps and be ready to play hopefully for late July. And with the playoff format the way it's being proposed, it should take approximately 2 months to get through and have a Stanley Cup awarded and season complete. So let me know what your thoughts are on this crazy rumor that Bob McKenzie put out on Twitter tonight. Do you think this is a good way of doing it? Let me know your thoughts and we can discuss further down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. Even through the NHL pause, we're still posting daily content and talking lots of hockey here at Top Shelf Hockey. And we'd love to have you join us, so subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.